Go. Guys, thank you and welcome to our show, The Fade. My name is Tony. I'm joined with my co host, Abby. And today is a very special day because we have two big names in the XJW community. We got Jay the comedian, and we also got Fifth here with us.
What's going on, everybody?
Guys, I'm super happy and glad that you guys were able to join us. I really appreciate it from both of you. Fifth, I really been looking forward to talking with you. I'm a big fan, man, and I know Jay said the same thing to me. Isn't that right, Jay?
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, I know the XJW Fifth. He's a rapper. He's really good." I'm like, "I know Fifth.
I
Got that album way back. What you know? Can you spit some bars off that album? Because I can. You know what I mean? That's all I need.
Man.
You know, that was the joint.
Oh,
I love
man,
that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I remember you showing some love for that song, man. I appreciate it, man. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with you guys and, ready to get into a good discussion. So thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely, man. So just to preface here, if anybody wants to jump in, Jay, Abby, Fifth, if anybody wants to jump in with questions and whatnot, please let me know. I did send you guys a little idea on what we might be able to talk about.
Right.
So I guess we should just get right into it. So really what I wanted to start our conversation off with you, Fifth, is just talking about the music, man. I really love the music. What first introduced me to your music, I believe, have been your first single, Cost of Doing Business.
That's correct, yes.
Right. And man, I'm telling you, I really love that song. And I wanted to, first of all, ask you, what really inspired you and motivated you to get into the music industry as an artist, first of all?
Man, so I've always loved music. And as you could probably imagine, as growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, especially this genre of music is not something that is encouraged. In fact, it's frowned upon
Right.
in very in no uncertain terms. So it's just kind of something that I've always enjoyed and something that I've kind of always kind of had a knack for. But I kind of would just maybe make little songs just for me, or maybe to show like one or two other people or something like that, back to when I was like maybe 15 or 16, here and there, very sporadically, just kind of having fun with words and doing things like that. And, once the only reason I didn't pursue it before was because I was a Jehovah's Witness and I was doing everything that I was doing in there. And once I no longer had that reason, even though I was older than I would have, wanted to have been, maybe, if I had started as a teenager or whatever, but I was like, why not? I'm just going to do it. I want to, like, this is what I like. This is what I enjoy. I actually think I'm good at it. So yeah. I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to, do music videos. There's no reason why not to. So that's basically the story behind that.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, obviously you're talented. You have skill when it comes to music.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask you too about some of the lyrics, maybe some of the inspiration that led to some of your lyrics. One of my favorite lines from Cost of Doing Business is that you rather have questions you can't answer than answers you can't question. And I think that's one of the lines that hit me the most, especially having recently woken up from the JWs at that time when I was listening to that song. What were some of your personal experiences, if you're willing to share, that ended up leading maybe to those lyrics, to the ideas in your songs, or even maybe your waking up story, if you'd like to share that with us?
Yeah, I think first of all, I'll say that particular quote or that idea, I think there's several variations of that idea that have been said before. I'm forgetting the name of who it's originally attributed to, this philosopher. I'm forgetting it, but I put my own kind of spin on it. But I think the idea is basically, when you're a Jehovah's Witness or you belong to any of these other groups, or you subscribe to these ideologies, these very like fundamentalist ideologies, you have an answer for everything. And it makes you, it's kind of comforting to be able to say, well, these people don't know why we die or why we get old. I know why, and I have an answer. Even if it's not true, it makes you feel better because you have an answer to it. And, in that situation, obviously, you're not able to question the answers that you have because they're truth and they're absolute truth and there's no wiggle room. And, you know, for me, and I think a lot of us have come to that conclusion that, you know, you get to a point where you realize I want to be, I'm a smart guy. I should be able to question these things. I should be able to challenge whatever beliefs are out there, even if they're my own. You know, there shouldn't be any limits to really digging deep, and I shouldn't be scared of what I might find. You know, so that's kind of the space that I choose to operate in, and say that even if I don't know everything, I would rather continue my search and continue just searching for answers and just appreciating and enjoying the process of doing that and continuing to learn. Because I feel like once you get to the point where you say like, okay, well, I know it all, then you can't really grow and you're just, you know, you're just stagnant, you're just stuck, you know, right there. So that's just something that as I've, you know, made my way out of the organization and continue to question things even further. You know, some of the things that I believed right when I left the organization, some of those beliefs have changed and evolved, or, you know, depending on how you look at it. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at, just constantly trying to grow and never being afraid of what research or digging deep will lead to, like the answers that it will lead you to.
And that's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point, because I know that for a lot of people that leaves the organization or just try to do different things or whatever, one thing that I see routinely is people getting into this position of absolutes. You know what I mean? Like, this is the absolute answer, and this is absolute, and it leads you to all type of craziness. You know what I mean? Because whenever you tie yourself up to a certain belief or a certain agenda or anything, and you are hard tied to it, it almost constantly always leads to a bad situation. You have to constantly be flexible. You have to constantly move around with the opinion of, hey, I could be wrong. Not telling you not to have confidence in yourself, not telling you not to have confidence in things that you've done and your research you've done, but to also be willing and open to take in new information. Because even if you are right, taking in more information will give you a better standing in your own position, and also gives you a better understanding of what somebody else's position is who's trying to either change your mind or just trying to put you on to some new information. Never be afraid of information. And it's crazy because, like, when you lead the Jehovah's Witness organization, they make sure that you feel uncomfortable receiving new information. Like, information about anything that goes contrary to what they taught you or what they want you to know or what they want you to believe. You literally, even to this day, like a fully awoke XJW like myself, I still feel kind of weird going into church. You know what I mean?
It's just giving yourself the permission to question and to look at new things, because for a lot of us that were in the organization for so long, it was almost instinctual to, if this is bad or this is a negative slant, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to continue reading it. So it's just even getting to the point where you can allow yourself to look at information that challenges your worldview. And I think for a lot of witnesses, that's a problem. They can't take anything that challenges their worldview. Yeah. So it's just once we make our way out, it's now allowing ourselves to be comfortable with something that changes our perspective or maybe puts it in a different light.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, you know, and the way that I think of it is that process never stops. So like, for example, if somebody contacts me and says, hey, I want some advice. Sometimes I get messages. I can't get around to all of them, but sometimes I get messages of people saying, hey, you know, what information I'm starting to have doubts, like what should I look into, blah, blah. And usually I will tell people, believe it or not, feel free to look at the Watchtower Library, like add that, put that into your process, because I'm not gonna, if I just tell you don't look at the Watchtower Library and only look at this, I feel like it's kind of the same thing as the reverse argument of what people normally get, like, oh, don't look at anything else, only look at this. So I say, feel free to look at the publications that they have, but just look at everything else. And then you'll be able to make an informed decision. That way you won't think that you won't have the feeling like you're leaving anything out, right? And again, it's just that idea of just not being scared. Even if, you know, I tell people, who knows, maybe you'll look at that information and it'll reaffirm your faith that you should be a Jehovah's Witness. Whatever happens, it's just information. So just take it in, you know, like analyze it honestly, and then go from there. Whatever comes out, just, you know, it is what it is.
It always killed me how people who are really like theists and they're really deep into the Bible, and at the same time they could be like, well, they told us don't be out here looking at stuff, because it could influence our mind and stuff like that. Like, did they give you your brain or did God? Like, you got to tell me what you believe, because if you believe that God gave you a brain and God gave you the ability to do like, critical thinking and research and this is the thing, out of everybody who I've ever known in my entire life, every time somebody learns something new, they're kind of like, that's dope, like with any and every time somebody learns something new, it's almost a feeling of like, it's hard to describe, but it's a certain euphoria you feel where you're like, wow, I didn't know that, now I know it, and I can share it and move it along. So anytime you're in these high control groups where they're limiting the use of your own mind, that literally goes against what you should be believing. You know what I mean? Like if you believe in God,
Absolutely.
I did a deep dive into whether or not the earth was flat. Because somebody came to me, it's from XJW, was like, Jay, check it out. It's some stuff, man. It's gonna blow your mind. I'm like, okay, bro, the earth is definitely not flat. But I'm gonna check it out just because and the funniest part is I was not only excited to kind of do it, but I was so entertained, like watching people who like for real believe the earth is flat and the reasons that they gave. It was hilarious, entertaining, and it informed me on what they believe. So now, like I said earlier, I can give a better argument as to why it's not true, and it further, like, gave me other things to look at and research and gain knowledge. So yeah, man, never turn down knowledge, never turn down the opportunity to get more knowledge, and use the knowledge that you get to give to other people. So I just thought that was fun.
If I may, I just want to mention, I really like what you mentioned about how some people are afraid to look at information because it might influence their views. And for any witnesses that might be watching, anything you believe should stand up to questioning. It should be able to withstand the weight of a simple question. If it can't stand up to questioning, if it can't stand up to scrutiny, how can it be true? You have to allow yourself to test it out. I think that's a scripture. I haven't read my Bible in a long time, but I think that's a scripture. Like, try to test it out and prove it to yourself and make sure it's real. And how can you do that if you never allow yourself to have your beliefs be seriously questioned? So
right.
Absolutely.
Right. So in regards to one more question I had in regards to your music, and also kind of ties in with what we're talking about. What I find so awesome, in my opinion, about your music is your writing style, right? So I wouldn't take your music and put it under a genre. Oh, this is XJW rap. You know what I'm saying? So my question, right? So my question to you was, with your writing techniques, how you're able to what you do to make sure that you're able to seamlessly just bring in your experiences and whatnot from the JWs into your music without being so like on the nose about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. So as you mentioned, that song "Cost of Doing Business," I think that one is pretty specifically and blatantly about this particular experience, right? And I mean, people may be able to draw things from it that haven't had it, but for the most part, that's kind of the one that's about that. And I wanted to kind of start off with that because that explains, pretty much everything I'm going to say next. That's kind of how I wanted to do it. But I think, when I'm coming up with a song, or I'm just, brainstorming and coming up with lyrics, I think sometimes it just kind of naturally comes out to where I'm wording it in such a way that it's relatable to people who come from a variety of different backgrounds. I think a lot of people can relate to, for example, the fight to be yourself, or the the constant struggle to be authentic and to live in your truth, and those types of things, right? And I think that our particular experience has some unique aspects to it, for sure, obviously, but there's a lot of things that I think, a lot of people can relate to. So it's been interesting that if I'm listening to my song with someone or, trying to introduce them to my music and they don't come from the ex-Jehovah's Witness background, it's always interesting for me to hear, oh yeah, this reminds me of my mom when we got into it or whatever, right? They're able to take these kind of different things from it. So I do kind of pride myself on, the ex-JWs, and this is what's kind of interesting to me, is that an ex-Jehovah's Witness will listen to my lyrics and they'll say, I know he's talking about this specifically, right? Because they know my story, they know their story, but somebody else will listen to it and, take something different from it. So, and to me, that's what I always appreciated about rap and just music in general, right? Like most of the rappers that I grew up listening to, my life experience looks nothing like, like I don't have much in common with Jay-Z's, experience with, being in the projects in Brooklyn or Nipsey Hussle or these different people. But what I was always able to relate to is that same kind of human quality, right? Just some of the same things that we all kind of go through. And that's what I think, because of those are some of the influences that I have as far as my music is concerned, that just kind of comes out naturally,
That's awesome.
And it takes some skills too, don't gloss over that. Like he ain't just throwing stuff together. He throwing it together in a way where people are like, yo, the flow is crazy. You know what I mean?
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to see how you've been able to kind of take these experiences and turn them into something that can be so relatable for so many people, because being a witness is like a 1 in a million experience. Like not everybody has this experience, but still so many people are able to relate to your music because it's so universal, and it's so awesome to be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
I was talking to my wife earlier today and she was asking me a question about like, maybe like witnesses in this area aren't treated the same as like witnesses in another area. And I was telling her and explaining to her, like, out of all the times I've made videos and all the comments I've ever received, witnesses for the most part have had almost the same experience, like when I say something, and this is me, like I wasn't into it like that, you know what I mean? Like I constantly wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. I was constantly rebelling and stuff. So I didn't progress that far, you know what I mean? I was on the school, but I never gave a Sunday talk. I was never a ministerial servant, never an elder, never went to Bethel. Like, but still, when I speak and I tell my experience, elders and pioneers and people who really excel through the congregation is like, yes, I remember that. You know what I mean? So our experiences are so intertwined and they're so almost exact that when you speak it in your song, it's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about,
Yeah.
And it really like gives a good view of what the organization is like, They have their set of rules and they stick to them. They know what works. They know how to get people in a position to be willing to give up their life and their kids' life to push the organization forward, And this is a system that ain't broke yet, so they gonna use it until the wheels fall off. But that's why I feel like we obligated, especially anybody who's in a position to talk and speak out about the organization, to put out as much information and to put as bright of a light onto that organization as possible, because that's the only thing that's going to really stop them. Is, everybody being like aware of what's going on inside those doors and inside those windowless buildings, that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's gonna stop them, boy. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
JW's, they don't buy property, boy. They say, nah, we'll build up our own windowless buildings.
We'll do it ourselves. We
That's
have
right.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, Jay, because that kind of ties into what I wanted to ask Fifth about today, which was activism in the XJW community. Hot button issue these days. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit about it, because I think you've been out longer than a lot of us, and so you've kind of seen the activism community over the years kind of blossom into what it is today. So I just wanted to know if you could compare today's activism community with how it was when you first left the organization, if there are any noticeable differences.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started I put out my first video in November of 2016. So we're in this November now. So we're at 4 years since I put that out. So in that it's hard to say. I feel like from what I hear talking to people that kind of came before me, it sounds like that was around the time of the boom of all these different channels and the Australia Royal Commission, which it happened in 2015. That was something that led a lot of people out of the organization and led a lot of people into activism. I would include myself, at least in part. But since then, I will say, what's kind of been nice is having people that were on my channel kind of go on and become activists themselves, and have a large following and things like that. Yeah, and see, that's like very important to me because one thing that I've noticed, and hopefully this is still addressing your question, but one thing that I've noticed is everybody wakes up in a different way, and there are so many different styles of activism. People talk about, for example, aggressive activism, so-called aggressive activism versus whatever the opposite of that is. And I really feel like different strokes for different folks. There's some people who will wake up off of something that would have never woken me up, and vice versa. So that's why I think that everybody that has a story, and that's the thing, everybody does have a story. Like I looked at my own experience and I was thinking, well, I didn't have this and I didn't have that. So like people may not really, mine may not be that moving for people, but lo and behold, a lot of people were able to resonate. And I think a lot of people have had that experience, right? Yeah. So but anyway, just going back to what you're saying, as far as the changes, I think it's just more people, there's more options, right? So like, however you like to be spoken to, let's say, or, maybe you prefer, somebody that has a specific experience. I think Jay and I are good examples of like contrast, right? He always talks about like, I was basically just doing whatever I wanted, in the organization. I still had these beliefs, blah, blah. Me, on the other hand, I was trying to be really, I was a square for most of the time, right? Really trying to be, diligent, and, I'm going to Bethel. I had a goal of being a circuit overseer, and I was really, trying to do it that way. So it's just, there's a space. I think there's a space in this activism world, if you will, for everybody, literally. Yeah. And it's just a matter of kind of finding your niche, And so I think that's one thing that I've noticed. I think people are just kind of fearlessly putting their stories out there. And, as far as any other changes, it's a little bit difficult for me to know. Some of it is difficult for me to know, like how it was before. But I know, sometimes what's unfortunate to see is some of the like the conflict and all of that kind of stuff. That's always, whenever I see that, it's all, everybody do whatever they want. If people feel passionately that an activist is carrying out the work in a way that they don't agree with, and that, that's fine. I guess the way that I think of it is like, man, I think we're all, for the most part, we have the same goal. We're just trying to help people out. We're trying to share these experiences. We're trying to wake people up. So like, however people do it, as long as you're not hurting anybody in some way, I think that, to me, that should be the focus. So yeah, hopefully that answers the answer.
Yeah, it does. It kind of goes into another question that I had about the JW, like activist community in general, the XJW community. That I know when I woke up, a lot of the stories that I saw were very similar, like very one note. It was like always a man who left the organization, an elder, ministerial servant, Bethlehem, no, a missionary, whatever. And it's like the same story over and over and over. And it felt very one note. Right. And now, we have so many people that are exiting the community that maybe may not be seeing their stories reflected and maybe feeling kind of left out. So I guess my question to you and to anybody here is like, how can we as activists in our community be more inclusive of everybody in our community? Like, what are some ways we can make sure that everybody feels represented?
I guess it depends on how you're running your channel or your activism. Like, for example, in my case, because I basically told my story once, and then I let everybody else tell their story. That's basically how my channel was set up. I just had people on and had them talk about whatever, so that for me, that was my way of being more inclusive, because my story is one way and I can't do anything about that. That's just how it is, right? But if I invite a woman on, for example, it's a completely different experience, right? Which that's really opened my eyes to realize what women went through by and large in the organization, something that I wasn't, I wasn't aware of until I started listening to your story. I'm like, oh man, that's crazy. Like,
I have no idea. It's wild.
I'm like, man, I'm going back and thinking like, man, did I participate in that any way of making the women feel, a certain way? It's just crazy when you see that. So that's one thing that I love to see also is women, sharing their experiences, because I think that is sometimes overlooked. But I think, like I said, that was my way of being inclusive, just trying to get on people to share their own experiences. And if that's not how your channel or your activism is set up, I guess maybe just covering different issues, just realizing, just trying to think of the entire gamut of the things that people experience within the organization, and trying to cover it, as much as possible. And to be honest, that's why, again, I kind of go back to the thing about more voices is important, right? Because at the end of the day, nobody can cover everything. Like, I literally can't think of every situation that every XJW has had. And I have over 40 videos. I'm sure there's somebody who watches my stuff and says, I'm not represented on that channel anywhere. It just, it just is what it is. So I think the more people that you have that are speaking out, I think we will pretty much cover everybody for the most part. And if your story is not out there, then you share your story.
Oh, that's coming. That's coming. That's a whole other video. But that's Tony and I's goal on our channel, is to make sure that everybody feels inclusive, because you can only tell like the same stories so many times, and so our goal is, hopefully, for anybody watching out there, please feel free to share your stories, because everybody's story is different. Unfortunately, witnesses are not a monolith. A lot of time, the only thing we have in common is that we were witnesses, and everything else about our story, even though it may overlap in some places, is completely different. So thank you for that. It is so important to make sure that we all feel like we have a seat at the table. It's a big table. There's room for everybody.
But there's a small warning I got to give with you, though, as far as like trying to be inclusive of everybody. It's actually impossible to, like, you could try it, like that could be what you strive to do, but it's gonna sometimes fall short. Some people are gonna feel slighted, and that's what happens in the community now. There's so many different personalities. It's just like anything else. The XJW community is no different than a Chicago Bear community or whatever. Shout out Chicago Bears getting whooped up on today. They deserved it. I know, Packers fan watching it, biggest smile. Oh, we lead the division. Anyway, I'm getting off.
Whatever.
The thing is that the point that I'm trying to make is that there's going to always be infighting, and the thing with infighting is, even when you're brother and sister, you know what I mean? There's going to be infighting. There's nothing you could do about infighting. All you can do is protect your peace, try to be respectful to others and things like that. And as far as like being inclusive, if you are an inclusive person, you don't really have to worry about being inclusive. You know what I mean? Because it would happen naturally. You know what I mean? Like, if your channel is an inclusive channel, like I feel this one is, you know what I mean? I feel that I don't think, like, if somebody came and watched this video right now and just like, I'm underrepresented, and they turn the video off, like, come on, you gotta miss the point. You know what I mean? Like,
we're doing our best, guys. Okay.
What do you want us to do, man? Come on, man. Like, come on.
Our budget is very low.
That's what I'm saying. We're trying to do it. We try. But the point is that as long as, I think, as we individually strive to just be naturally inclusive and whatnot, like, and just not be like, cut dismissive of anybody, be willing to take in, like I say, knowledge of any and everybody, I think that will always be good. The only reason I want to like point it out and kind of warn people is because I see sometimes in the XJW community where they they inclusive to everybody. They're nice to everybody. And then you get that one person that's just like, I don't like you, you know? And
what did I do?
Right. And you will ignore all the people who are like in love with you and who appreciate everything you do. And you'll just focus on that one person that don't like you. And you'll let them bring your energy
Why don't
down.
you like me?
Right. Like bring your happiness down, bring your peace down. And it's just certain times, that's the only reason I'm warning you, because if like, as long as you're doing it, you're going to get appreciated by the masses, and you appreciate that. The one or two people that's like, you know, like.
Well, I hope that those one or two people
you let them
watching,
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to let them go find out what make them happy, you know?
Yeah. We might surprise you. Just keep watching. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Shape up. I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned earlier, Fifth, about the different types of activism in the community, like the very aggressive versus like the very passive activism. I think we can all relate to our time in the organization. At least for me, like seeing people like picketing outside the convention, like screaming, like, like with their craziness and stuff. Repent, you're all sinners. Like that style of aggressive activism, and then other types of activism that we see, like they'll go up to carts and sometimes harass older sisters or whatever, like be really in their face about it. And then we have like our types of activism, like videos that we do and things like that. And I just wanted to ask you, like, if you feel like one can be more, I guess, influential or more important than another, and if maybe there's a direction that we should start shifting in, or should we just kind of keep going as a community as a whole in the direction that we're going?
Yeah. So again, I think some of this is kind of subjective, right? But I will say this. I've gotten a lot of messages from people over the years who thankfully, and I'm very appreciative if any of those people are watching, you know, people that have sent me messages. I'm appreciative of the feedback, not just feedback. I appreciate the feedback of people saying, I enjoy your channel, but an added bonus is when people say, this is why your channel stands out to me, you know? And so based on the feedback that I've gotten, I think what people appreciate by and large is, first of all, they don't like it when you exaggerate, right? So I know there's been times when stories have come out, you know, but they seem kind of sketchy. We don't really have the details. And I've chosen not to address it because I can't say for sure that, you know, it's accurate or whatever, right? So I choose to stay away from some of those things, even if they come up in the news, and until I'm able to like fully vet it, you know, that I won't even address it. Or if, you know, sometimes if somebody says something on my channel, you know, there's been times where I'm recording with someone and then they say, oh, the Watchtower actually said this, and I'll pause and be like, did it say that? And I'll look and I'll double check. And if I don't see it, I might not include that, right? And it's not a disrespect to that person at all, but that's kind of maintaining the intent. To me, one of the most important things is so what they say in there is that we make stuff up and we're lying and blah, 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 right? So if people are going to say that, they're going to say that anyway, but I want to make it as difficult as possible for you to accuse me of that, you know, because for the most part, when I say something, I'm telling you where you can find it written in the Shepherd the Flock of God book or in this publication or whatever, right? So I think for me, you know, just trying to really stick to the facts. The anecdotes I think are good. Anecdotal evidence is good because that's part of people's stories. But I do think that, you know, you just have to kind of walk a fine line. And I think for what I kind of always say is I make my brand of activism is the kind of activism that would have had the best chance of waking someone like me up. That's kind of how I do it, right? So there's other, yeah, that's what kind of works for me. So there's other things that even channels that I enjoy now, and I'm like, that wouldn't have ever done it for me. I can enjoy it now, but that actually may have pushed me away, right? Yeah. And so I think, you know, again, just being factual, you know, trying not to attack, trying not to like belittle, you know, because we remember being in that situation at one point. And I'm trying to make sure I'm like addressing specifically your question. You said where should we be like, what direction should we be going?
Yeah,
right?
Just I feel like sometimes the community can kind of devolve into like not just infighting, but just like mostly just belittling the witnesses for what they believe and not really trying to actively get them out of their belief system, which just like reinforces the whole world is against you type of mentality.
Yeah, I would just say just try as hard as we can to remember that we were once in that situation. Remember that we have family members that are still in that situation. Try to be empathetic, and just try to present things in a way. I would say this: be very clear on what your objective is. Right? If your objective is to if you want to mainly speak to the public and show certain things, then you may approach it a slightly different way than if you're actually trying to say, like, okay, what if a witness stumbles on my channel? How would they respond to the things that are on my channel, right? Like, I think what's most important is just thinking very clear, having your objective very clearly in mind. And then when you do that, I think that's going to affect and influence what you put out there and the effects that it will have.
Yeah. That's definitely a very good point. Just being mindful of our target audience, which I think sometimes goes by the wayside. Like Jay mentioned, like a lot of times witnesses are very extreme, so it's always very black and white. And I think it's about time we all try finding like nice little gray area. So I guess this is like a general question for all of us, just kind of talking about something you talked about, the kind of activism that woke you up. Like, what kind of activism woke you guys up and got us here to the point where we are today? Because there's different strokes for different folks, right? Like,
yeah,
I just happened to stumble upon Reddit one night, being, lazy at work, and then here I am a year later. But everything, is different for everybody else. So what woke you guys up? What type of activism kind of lifted the fog, so to speak?
It's so funny. So, are you familiar with the Hebrew Israelites? The Hebrew Israelites.
Yes, I'm very familiar with them.
You are, right? Yeah. So, okay, these guys
I'm
are
like, the Israel. Who?
The Hebrew Israelites. Let me get their name right. That's my bad. These guys are nuts, like crazy, racist, bad. Just they're bad, but they're also hilarious. Like, they will say the wildest things to some complete strangers and will not like break a sentence. It's just like they'll say it to their face without blinking and with all the emphasis possible, and they'll tell their brother, like, read the scripture, brother, and then the brother be like, Matthew 5:1, and they get it's hilarious, right? Now, with that said, they did make this one point where they're saying, like, read the scripture. Jesus had hair of wool, skin of bronze, stuff like that. And I'm looking at my little, greatest man ever book, and Jesus in there, this brother look Italian. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought, according to the Bible, if we're a religion of being detailed, why is this detail not being put out there,
Yeah.
So I asked some elders and I asked some other, they're like, oh, you must be looking at apostate material. I'm like, no, I don't think the Hebrew I keep messing their name up. I don't think the Hebrew Israelites could be considered apostate material. I thought these were just some crazy fools with the Bible, and I didn't think of it as apostate material. But according to them, anything that makes you think and ask questions is apostate material. But I just remember them keep telling me, yo, you must be looking at apostate material. You gotta stop looking at that. And I'm just like, well, let me go look at some apostate material and just see why am I getting these like kickbacks and pushbacks like this for a simple question? Like, why aren't they doing that? Like, explain that. That's the only response I got was, one, is it really important? Does it really matter? Like, yeah, it kind of matters to me, Yeah. And the other response was, oh, you must be looking at apostate material. So I went to the internet, right? And I was so like lame about it. I just put in apostate in YouTube, right? And
we're gonna get all the X-Men stuff now.
Right.
That's very specific.
I'm going straight to the source. I put in apostate.
Looking over your shoulder, like.
Yeah. I made sure nobody's looking. Like, yeah, the demon's gonna probably get in, but whatever. I'm doing it right now. So I put in the word apostate into YouTube and I hit enter. The first video came up was a video by somebody named Apostate Chick, right? Are y'all familiar with her?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of her videos. I liked what I've seen so far.
Yeah, she's very entertaining. She has comedy. She's the bomb, right? And I started watching her videos, and her videos made so much sense, and they were so entertaining. And all the things that was in my head, all the questions I had, some that I just never said verbally, she was just presenting them, and the evidence she was putting out there was irrefutable. So I'm like, yo, wow, this she's making a lot of sense right now. And I had more questions for them. And next thing you know, I'm like, eventually I was completely out the organization, because the more questions you get, the least amount of answers you get, the smaller the answers get, and the more your mind opens up. And at the point where I'm starting to put things together and string things together, and I'm saying it to other people, and other people looking at me crazy, like, well, why would you say that? It's like, oh man, I think I'm turning into an Apostosaurus Rex.
It's contagious. You gotta keep it to yourself.
It's contagious. Apostate 19 or whatever. But it happened like that. And then eventually, and it's crazy because even when I was like out, because at the time I looked into the stuff, I wasn't really going to the hall like that, but I was still mentally like, I may, and it's funny because I remember thinking, I may not go to the hall like I'm supposed to, and I may not do the stuff I'm supposed to, but at least I'm not an apostate. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's the entire reason.
I haven't hit the bottom rung yet.
Right.
I haven't hit rock bottom.
That's the entire reason. Even though I didn't go to the hall, I wasn't going to the hall, that I even looked up an apostate video. That I avoided looking up apostate videos, because it was just like, that's the unforgivable sin. That's the worst thing you can do, And I always like, I can think of some worse things to do, but okay, whatever.
But isn't it funny how witnesses like demonize things like that, like, or the organization, I should say, they demonize liquid information, but not like other like very serious things that should maybe be like reported to the police, things like that. No, the apostate material, that's like the real big ticket item here, which is
well,
crazy.
I mean, you got to realize what the goal is. The goal isn't to help people. The goal isn't to free people and like make sure that everybody's okay. Because remember, they'll make an announcement at the Kingdom Hall marking somebody. Like, there's a person who isn't like doing what they're supposed to do, right? But they will not make the same announcement letting everybody know, hey, we got a child molester or somebody up in here that ain't, touching kids, so y'all be like, if the goal is to keep the congregation clean, right? And to protect Jehovah's flock or whatever, right?
Okay. The individuals now, because they changed it. It's individuals.
Oh, the individuals. Members. Not the members.
They changed
the
shepherd of the flock. Right? They changed the book around, I think.
They're supposed to protect their individuals. But but the thing is that this is the most, like, the clearest view of them purposefully doing things to protect the organization. Because by not letting people associate and talk to people who are considered, a danger to their spirituality, but, being okay with them to hang out with somebody who may take your kid and do something to them, that shows you where their priorities lie. Like 100%. It doesn't take rocket science. You know exactly where they're going and where they want to be, and it is not anywhere like in a position to help people. Not the goal.
Yep.
I don't know if it's ever been a goal.
No, and once you realize that, it kind of throws you for a loop. Like, I know when I woke up, I was like in complete shock. I was like the Uber dub, like goody two shoes, regular pioneer, turned down college. Like, I served when he was greater. Like, I was like, this can't be true. Stop, these are apostate lies. And then once I started doing research, I was like, oh my God, no, this can't be happening. And once one thing is untrue, the whole thing unravels. That's what happens. That's what always happens. Because that's how crazy witness beliefs are. Not, I shouldn't say crazy. They're just very intertwined, so intermeshed that once the one thing falls apart, it all kind of comes loose. And then you end up talking to me and Tony after that happens.
But that's kind of how it goes, though. And this is the thing. It's not just the Jehovah's Witnesses that use this type of thing to control people. Basically, it comes down to that first building block. That one thing, if I can get you to believe this one thing, then I could take that and go anywhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, some people, it's just the belief in God. Like, once I get you to believe in God, then I can get you to hate people who are homosexuals. I can get you to, dress a certain way and behave a certain type of manner. But all I just need you to do is, once you believe in God, then I can add the Bible and all the other stuff on top of it. When the Jehovah's Witnesses, basically, all we got to get you to believe is that the governing body is God's mouthpiece on earth. If we can get you to believe that one block, we could then start building all the other craziness on that.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you guys have ever read this book by Steve Hassan. He's a cult expert, a cult researcher. It's called Combating Cult Mind Control, and he talks about that in his book. He developed the BITE model. It's behavior, information, thought, and emotional control, and these are things exhibited by high control groups. And he talks about that in his book, how these groups are designed, like, by the way that they are, to control you. And when I was reading this book, I was like going through, like, okay, but he's talking about the witnesses, because it was so spot on. And at the end of the chapter, he was like, this is like pretty standard. It's par for the course for most high control groups to act in this way. So it's crazy how you mentioned, like, it's not just the witnesses, it's any sort of high control group, Scientology, very fundamentalist religious groups, things like that act this way. And unfortunately, they cause a lot of harm to people that are, by and large, very innocent people that get involved. You know what I mean? They're not bad people. They don't want to hurt anybody. A lot of times they get involved just because they want to help. And it's a shame that they get taken advantage of in that way.
Hey, funny story. I went to my brother-in-law. He's a Jehovah's Witness, right? My sister's Jehovah's Witness too, but I went to my brother-in-law and I just I printed out the things that, make a cult or whatever. And I was like, hey, check this out. I'm going to read something to you. This is what a cult is. And I just started reading it. I think I got to like the fourth or fifth one. He like, man, get that apostate mess up out of here.
You use the C word. You can't use the code word.
But this is the thing. I didn't. At no point did I say Jehovah's Witnesses or your organization or anything. I literally just read what makes a cult. Yeah. And it was printed out. It wasn't printed out from an apostate site. It was printed out on like online, like just regular. The first thing you pull up, like if you went to Google and put in what is a cult, and they'll break down like, the things that make a cult, and you just start reading it. You're like, yeah, that's the Jehovah's Witnesses right there. And I'm telling you, he was like, get that apostate mess up out of it. I'm like, yo, this is at no point did it say this is what the Jehovah's Witnesses is doing, but you were able to somehow like link those two things up, So I mean,
the mind control, that's how it works. Like, they have to shut it down to keep believing it, like that's how it is. It's
hilarious.
But isn't it funny how you, like you said, you didn't mention the witnesses or whatever at all.
Nope.
Yet they still subconsciously connected the two as you were reading them the list. And I think when we talk about control and whatnot in the part that she's bringing up here, this is why I think that channels like you guys and artists like you guys are so important to the XJW community, as well as in regards to activism. Just because I know when I was waking up, when you have outlets like this that aren't necessarily so in your face or berating you as a witness and making you feel bad, obviously, like you said, Fifth, before, that can end up turning people away. But when you have outlets like music or you're able to find humor in these situations, it gives people maybe a little bit more of an opportunity for a listening ear. I especially remember, though, when it comes to waking up, like you brought up before, Fifth, as well, it's things like the Australian Royal Commission, right? Why was it so effective in being one of the biggest things to start waking people up? I think it's because as we're being controlled and taught all this about, apostates and their lies and whatnot, it's when it's on that screen, on that TV, when you see it on the news, they have Jehovah's Witnesses in the title. Oh, they're talking about us, right? And then all of a sudden you see all this terrible stuff on that TV. It's like, what's going on over here? So I think it's also that, that substantial ness to it that makes it so true. It's just like, wow, that's hard to argue with. I mean, it's just like, that might be considered Satan's world, right? But it's like when they have it up on the news and they're taking it to court, and when Jeffrey Jackson is up there on the stand,
lying, like a snake. I can't. I'm sorry. Every time I think about that whole Royal Commission with the elders, and Brother Jackson, just rankles me. I can't take it. Can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
One of the things that was crazy about it is that I noticed is that this was one of the first times I ever seen Jehovah's Witness beliefs be questioned, like like seriously questioned, and they had to give a logical response to the answers. And if you're like, I guess if you're indoctrinated, you're like, yeah, that's a good answer. But when they're pressing you on these questions of why are you letting this happen to kids, and they're giving you, these are professional lawyers, like they know the questions. And the thing is with lawyers, they don't really ask a question unless they already know the answer.
Yeah.
So when they're asking these questions, they know what they're going to say, and they're trying to set them up for an even bigger reveal later on. And they did that, like, they did a great job of it. These lawyers were not letting them off the hook at all.
Yeah.
And to actually be a Jehovah's Witness and to see that and to just be like, wow, why is that way? That actually doesn't make any sense, and because I mean, that's what lawyers do. They get their point across. They're very clear. They're very methodical. And I've never seen Jehovah's Witnesses be questioned as far as their beliefs. And not just any Jehovah's Witnesses, like the leadership, you know what I mean? Like the people who know everything front and back. And so many people saw that and saw those challenges, and it opens your eyes up. It's one of those things where it's like, whoa,
I think for me, when I found out about the Royal Commission, when I first woke up, like what rankled me the most was watching their expressions and how indignant they got at being questioned. Like, how dare you question my authority? Who are you? Like, you're just some stupid worldly man and my God is going to destroy in a couple of years. Like, how dare you question me? And it really surprised me to see people that are supposed to be so humble and taking the lead, not only being so offensive and so indignant, but just flat out like lying, like straight up lying and denying any sort of responsibility for something so serious. When he said, like, who are we to be responsible for the well-being of all the children of Australia? It's like, well, you guys paint yourselves as like moral arbiters of the world and you're better than everybody else. So shouldn't you not let known predators out into the community?
Isn't that what Cain said about his brother? He like, am I my brother's keeper? Like, that was literally the bad guy in the Bible. You going with him? That's the guy you gonna go with?
And I love it because even though as lawyers, they didn't just pull out a big law book, boom, and slam it on the table and start reading them. They were actually questioning their beliefs through the Bible. They were reading them scriptures and they were saying, oh, if you believe this, then why does it say this? What do you have to say about this in this scripture? And I thought they just did a fantastic job, and it was hard to argue with them. And that's why I think it really ended up being very successful in waking people up.
Yeah,
I think that's really true. I think the reason for me the Australian Royal Commission was so powerful is because, like, in my regular work, because at this point music is maybe a little bit more than a hobby at this point. So in my work, I work in court as an interpreter. So, I see a lot of trials and I see a lot of, attorneys arguing back and forth. And I know that attorneys, kind of to Jay's point, that's what they do, right? They're very skilled at asking questions in a certain way. Even if something is, even if they're just trying to plant doubt that's not there or whatever, right? So I was used to seeing that with attorneys. So when I watched the Australian Royal Commission, I was kind of looking at it through that lens, especially as somebody who was trying to still justify the Jehovah's Witness religion and all their practices. I was like, okay, well, these are very skilled attorneys. They have gotcha questions. They're trying to blah, blah. But I was able to watch it and see, nah, that's not it. It's actually, these are very legitimate things that they're bringing up. And even beyond the training, they're just asking, like when the judge asks, isn't it cruel to, if some, you got somebody that was molested and then you take away their whole social structure. Like, they were the ones who were the victim of the child molestation. They decide they no longer can be part of this organization. And now they don't have anybody that they've known for their whole life. Like, you just listen to that stuff and you say, attorney training aside, that's a human question, right? And like, it's very relatable, and I think
Yeah.
that's why, you know, that's one of the reasons Australia Royal Commission was so powerful, because, you know, it's not. I don't know that it can be classified as even apostate, because it's a government it's a governmental like procedure or judicial
Yeah.
procedure. So like, you know, witnesses love to talk about their victories in the Supreme Court and stuff like that, right? When one of their representatives has to speak out against the organization. Ironically, that's actually how I got to the Australian Royal Commission, thinking that it was a governing body member defending the organization. That's why I watched it, because I was still kind of in that stage. I was like, man, I just need Jehovah, just give me something to help me, like my faith. And then so I watched that, and I'm like, it was all over after that, right? But again, I didn't go into it thinking, you know,
Yeah.
I went into it with the opposite mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think that that's kind of one of the go-to things, in my opinion, if somebody is open to watching that. I think it's one of the go-to things, because it's really hard. You know, if you find yourself arguing with that as a Jehovah's Witness, you have to kind of ask yourself, okay, what am I defending? Or am I like, am I saying, you know, why don't I have any sympathy towards these children? That, you know, why doesn't my mind go there first, instead of saying, oh, they're trying to attack my religion? Like, these women are on, you know, you're listening to them, they're crying, they went through these terrible things. Like, you know, to me, that's kind of where you're kind of forced to kind of deal with this on a human level, as opposed to just trying to, you know, defend your religious beliefs.
Hey, Fifth, I got a question for you, bro.
Okay, for sure.
So, all right, when you're in these courtrooms, right, and you know you got a lawyer who has a good case, right, and then you have a lawyer, and he's against a lawyer who has a bad case. You know what I mean? Ain't it almost like obvious, like quickly, who has the better case? And like just the way the two lawyers behave, like the one lawyer is kind of grasping for straws, and the other lawyer is like asking very pointed questions. You know what I mean? Like, are you used to seeing stuff like that?
You know, I think sometimes that happens, but then on, you know, the other side of it, even if people don't have good cases, or, you know, don't have very strong cases, sometimes that's why they get these very high-priced attorneys, and these attorneys are very capable of, you know, putting things in such a way that kind of at least makes you think that they may have a point. But yeah, that definitely does happen. In my role in court, I'm supposed to, especially in what I'm doing, not form an opinion. But sometimes after I leave, I'm like, yeah, this was a good point, or you know, this or whatever. But yeah, I feel what you're saying though. Sometimes, like, when things are sometimes there'll be attorneys that'll kind of bring up things you're like, what does that have to do with anything?
Right.
You know, you can tell that they don't have a very strong case. But yeah, it's different, bro. It's like you kind of have the whole like spectrum of like attorneys in there.
The reason I ask is because during the Royal Commission, like the attorneys for Australia would ask you very pointed like questions, and they had a certain confidence that I see in lawyers with a good case, when lawyers know that they're on the right side. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like I say, the really high paid lawyers, it don't matter what side they on, they're gonna seem like they the bomb. But I felt like the Jehovah Witnesses and their attorneys were like really on the defensive the entire time. And I was wondering if you caught that, like when you were watching it. Like, did you see like they was kind of grasping for straws and trying to, like, you know, build a mountain out of a molehill? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would definitely say I felt that way. I mean, it was very hard what they were trying to do, and trying to, like, you know, kind of basically minimize or dismiss these horrible things that happen to people. You know, it's not really a whole lot that you can say that's really going to make sense, you know? So yeah, I definitely felt like definitely the stronger case was on the other side, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know you guys obviously have families and things to get to, so I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but there was one last thing I kind of wanted to get in here and discuss with you guys. Jay, you recently did your live stream and you uploaded as a video to YouTube, and I thought it was fantastic. Your main topic there was talking about unifying the XJW community. I really loved it, and I really wanted to ask both of you your opinions and your advice that you'd want to give to the XJWs right now in the community that may be watching this or who follow either of you. Despite what's going on right now, we probably are living in some very tough times, very interesting times,
Very
and maybe
unique.
yeah, and very some would say divisive times, right? You know, we have a big community, people from different countries, different backgrounds, whether different political beliefs, different ideals, whatever the case may be. Um, at a time that we're so divisive, what advice can that the world may be so divisive rather? What advice can you guys give to the XJW community and how we can remain unified and united to really pull through the struggles that we've all gone through together?
Well, one of the things that I want people to know and try to like keep in mind, always keep in mind, is to, like I said earlier, be always available and ready to receive information, whether you like it or not. You know, receive it and be respectful. And you have to learn how to have a conversation, you know, because the moment anybody in the conversation gets defensive, it's no longer a conversation, it's an argument. And when people are arguing, we're not trying to exchange information, we're trying to win. An argument is a sport. It is not an exchange of information. So if you find yourself in an argument, even if you win the argument, chances are the person ain't gonna acknowledge that you won, you know? So it's almost useless. So always try to be in a position to where you're trying to get more information and you're trying to get your point across. Because when you learn how to have a conversation, it really clears up a bunch of like drama and problems, and it's just something that people would need to do to just work on, because a lot of the arguments and a lot of divisiveness I see is just, it starts off from people not knowing how to conversate. Well, you know what I mean? Like, if the first thing you say to somebody is, look at you, you're so dumb, how could you ever believe something? That's boom, you already put this person in a defensive position and you're arguing. You're not trying to, you know what I mean? Like, it's very simple. Be respectful. And if you are trying to get your point across, first figure out what their point is and listen and respond to questions and really like try to exchange information, give and take information. And if we are ever in a position to whereas you feel like your peace and your happiness is constantly being taken away, you have every right to protect your peace, you know, go off on your own. I preach selfishness all the time, because when you're an ex-Jehovah Witness, this is one of those times in your life where you absolutely need to be selfish. You need to take whatever you need to fix yourself and secure your happiness, secure your mental sanctity, and it don't matter who's trying to stop you. Don't let nobody stop you. You get what you need. You know what I mean? And like I say, that's not a license to be a dick to people. I'm just saying, just be mindful of what you need, because once you've taken care of yourself, you can then give and take care of other people. You can't do it until you do that. So more than anything else, let's learn how to talk to each other. Let's always remember that chances are the stuff that gets us the most upset and pissed off or whatever, give it a little time. You probably ain't gonna even be mad in a little while, you know? So you need to take breaks. If you need to, like, you know, change the subject. And the underrated thing, agree to disagree. That works too. Like, all right, well, you believe that, I believe this. All right, cool. We're gonna still get some drinks later and kick it, and you know, like, that was a real thing. Just don't do these 5 things, because these are the 5 things that like piss me off. I hope I remember all 5 of them. One of them is twisting people's words. If somebody says something, believe that that's what they're saying and that's what they mean. Don't try to like, oh, you're trying to say this. No, don't do that. Whatever they say, take it at face value and try to move on. Next, don't do that thing where, oh yeah, you still got that Jehovah Witness mind state. That's what's wrong with you. Don't do that. Okay, like I'm gone out of there. Even if I do find myself struggling with something that I had beaten into me by a violent cult, don't bring that up. That's kind of whack, bro. Also, don't. What else do people do? Because it's a couple of them. I hope I can remember them all. But don't I can't remember it now. Well, that's 2.
2 and 5.
If I remember the other 3, because I'm telling you, it's the same things all the time. Oh, assertions. Like, oh, you don't do research. You don't really read. You don't really do the stuff. Just because I didn't come to the same conclusion you came to by the information you gave me, that doesn't mean I didn't look at the information. That just means I looked at it and I didn't fall for the same thing you fell for. You know what I mean?
Right.
So these are those 3 of them. I can't remember the other 2, but those 3 right there. Take those 3 and just try to keep those in mind and learn how to talk to each other. Learn how to work with each other and be forgiving, you know, like, come on, bro. We ain't got that long on this planet. It's no reason to be holding grudges for anybody who don't really deserve it. Oh, and one more. I'm sorry. One more. I just remembered it.
I think that's 4.
There's 4. Yeah, we're up to 4. We're up to 4. Fake outrage. Oh my God, that pisses me off. Like somebody is you don't want to be friends with them no more or something like that, but they haven't done anything to technically end the friendship. So you wait for them to do something little, and then you hop onto that one thing like, you put your head backwards today? How dare you? You know that's disrespectful to me. No, it's too late, Fifth. It's too late. You already upset me. The friendship is over.
So.
It's only me and Abby now. Y'all done. Y'all done.
Abby and Jay show now. Okay.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
But seriously, like the fake outrage about stuff that you're really not outraged about and using it as a like to gain some type of moral high ground or to like put yourself above somebody or to use it as a reason to end a friendship. Don't do that. That's whack, bro. And that's 4. I don't remember the 5th. But here's my homeboy 5th though. He's here.
Yeah, as long as you remember me. That's
right. 5th is the 5th.
Right. Man, yeah, those are great points. I don't want to start if you're not done, Jay.
No, I'm done. That's it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think those are all really good points. See, this is kind of a tricky one for me, if I'm being honest, because I guess, you know, well, the whole world is like this, but especially in the United States, especially with the election that just happened and everything like that, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny that when we come out of this politically neutral, right, organization, we now have the freedom to take our position on things such as politics and things like that. And, you know, I personally don't even want to tell people not to do that, even if they want to do that on their XJW channels, that they want to say, hey, I support this, or I feel like this is important. You know, I think you can do whatever. You're free to do whatever you want at the end of the day, right? So you can do whatever you want. I would just kind of go back to something I said earlier and just say, keep in mind your objective and realize that perhaps focusing on certain things, in my opinion, focusing on certain things is possible you may alienate some people, right? Is that the end of the world? Not necessarily. I just think it's something you should take into consideration and just kind of realize it. And then whenever, you know, then proceed accordingly, however you want to proceed. And I think the other thing is also kind of going back to what I said earlier, I believe there's a space for a lot of different kinds of activists within this community, as it's called, right? Like, right. I think there's a space for the atheist activists. I think there's a space for the Christian activists. I think, you know, if that's what if people want to include that, right? I personally, you know, especially early on, I just chose not to include that just because of what my objective is. But like anybody who wants to go in a different way, maybe you'll speak more to a certain group of people, right? And maybe like you'll assist them, you know, even more. So again, I think there's a space for everybody, and kind of along those same lines, what I think is whack personally is, you know, criticizing, using your platform. This is just my opinion, but using your platform to criticize another XJW activist. I just think that's kind of like, okay, well then what are you doing? You're free to do it if that's what you want to do. But again, like, what's the objective, right? Like, for me, that never made any sense for me to be like, I'm going to devote this 1 hour special to this activist, right? Like, for what? Like, if somebody's coming up to my channel for the first time, they don't even know about any of this. Like, they don't care about this. They're not gonna be like, you know what, I heard Fifth clown this activist and that woke me up. Like, that's never gonna happen. You know what I mean?
You
So,
roasted
like,
him, Fifth. That's why I decided to turn in my DA letter. You already know.
yeah, like that to me, that just doesn't make sense. So, but anyway, yeah, just there's room for everybody, and again, just make sure if you have an opportunity, you're in a position to share your story, just do it, because you never know who it might help. I think that's the best kind of advice I can give.
Right. That's great. And I feel like it's important to let everybody know, despite whatever our backgrounds are, our political beliefs, our religious beliefs, after we leave the organization, the JWs, we want to make sure that, at least in my opinion, that we give people a safe place to go to, a place where they can feel they have a community and people they can share their experiences with and have that in common. So this is really why I appreciate you guys, and I wanted to extend that thank you to everything that you guys do. It's really important.
Yeah,
Thanks, bro. I appreciate
all
it.
your contributions to both of you and other people that may be watching have also contributed a lot. We all contribute a lot to this big table, and our end goal is the same, regardless of our different beliefs. After we leave, our end goal is always to help those who leave and land on their feet and figure themselves out, and have the smoothest exit possible, because it's not easy, and we want to help make it, a little less bumpy.
Right. And if I could just like add something very briefly, I promise I won't be long-winded, but I was just going to say, kind of just piggybacking on that, also think about your own well-being as well. If you want to get into this space and be an activist, I know for me personally, usually I would generally say, when I did an interview, once that process was over, I took an emotional hit every single time. Like, I had to hear this story kind of again, go back through all of this stuff again. And I needed to kind of like not respond to people who were sending me messages for a while. Like, I had to really watch myself with that, because I think you can also kind of be giving of yourself. Your intentions may be great, but you just kind of how Jay was saying earlier, like being selfish, it's also very important to look out for yourself, especially if you've been stripped of most of your community, right? You don't want to be in this space, in this activism space, at the expense of your own happiness and your own joy and things like that. So I've had to find that out and kind of remind myself that, like, it's good, it's very important to try to stay balanced with it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm learning that this week, actually, because we're doing a lot since we're starting out. I'm like, I'm so tired. So tired.
It does take a lot.
We just have to find a balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So unless you guys wanted to add any more, I really wanted to make sure I thanked you guys again. And we really appreciate both of you taking the time to speak with us and getting this information out there. If you guys ever want to reach back out and have another conversation, we got plenty of topics to discuss.
Oh, yes,
plenty.
We do. Oh,
absolutely. Oh,
so,
man, thanks for the invite, man. I appreciate it. This has been fun. It's the second one. This is another good one, so I appreciate it. Meeting you, Abby. You're very
it was nice meeting you too. Hopefully we'll get just Abby and Jay show one day. We'll cut Tony out.
We got you. We don't need none of them backwards hat wearing people out here. Especially these Packer dudes, man.
Come on, I had to represent.
All the time.
Oh man.
Boy, he paid for he bought the $107 hoodie out. He got that right off NFL.com.
Well, our last conversation, you were wearing the Bears shirt, so I had to come and show out today.
I had a Bears shirt on, and then we got beat by the Titans. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, well, this is the winners only household, because I live in LA. So it's
okay, all right.
Thank you guys so much again for joining us, and we really appreciate it. Everybody, make sure to go follow Jay the Comedian on his YouTube channel. Go check out Fifth's music. What's the name of your album again, Fifth?
It's called 1 Year Old. It's the same that's printed here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's kind of the idea of, kind of starting life over. And that's how a kid would say it. I'm only 1 year old. So that's the idea. But yeah, that's the name of my album, is 1 Year Old. And the artist's name is Fifth.
And it's out on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music. You're up on YouTube. So please, guys, go check that out. And be sure to check us out, the Fade Official Show Podcast, XJW Podcast. So thank you guys again. And you guys have a good night, all right?
You guys too. Thank you guys.
Take care.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care.